In this video, we'll go over the basics of using LS2 Staff. If you'd like more information on any areas of LS2 Staff, since we will be moving quickly in this video, please go to LS Community and see the videos and documentation available there. When logging into LS2 Staff, depending on your library's settings, you may need to select a location from the drop-down menu and a workstation as well. Then select Log On. When you first log into LS2 Staff, you'll see that like other library.solution modules, there is a help file at the top right of your screen. At the top left of your screen, there are three tabs. Borrower Services, which is where you will interact with borrowers such as checking in or out items, placing holds for them, helping them pay charges, or looking at their information and adding new borrowers. There is also Staff Services at the top left, which is where you can look at particular titles and items. And depending on your own permissions, you may be able to make edits to particular items and even change holdings codes. And finally, the Lists and Actions tab is where you can run some reports without having to get all the way into LS2 reports. So let's start with the Borrower Services tab. You can see that on this tab right now, it's a pretty blank screen, and the only button that's lit up on the left side of my screen is Check-in. And the reason for this is that I don't have any borrower pulled up. So I can check items in without having searched for any borrower, and that's completely fine. But if I want to do really anything else on this screen, I'm going to need to search for a borrower. So what I will do is start by clicking on the search bar at the top right of the screen. And if I have a patron who has come up to the desk and they have their card, I can just scan their barcode there. If they don't have their card with them, I can also search for their name here. I can search by first name or last name or both. I can also type in their barcode number if they know their number. And if I only know how to spell part of their name, then I can type in part of it and add an asterisk. So I'll show you what that looks like. So I've entered CRA with an asterisk, and when I execute that search, I'm going to get several different options. So I've got one borrower whose first name is Craig, another borrower whose last name is Crabtree, and so on. I can scroll down through the borrowers, and again, depending on your permissions, you may be able to see borrowers from different locations if you're at a multi-site library. If you only want to see borrowers from your own location, select Home Locations Only instead of My Logon Locations. Now I can see that this is the borrower that I want, so I'm going to select the name. For some borrowers, when you select their name, you're going to get this responsible party pop-up. This comes up when a borrower is linked to other accounts, so typically the responsible party is either a parent or a teacher, and then the parties that they're responsible for would be their children or their students. So I can select either one, and then that pulls up the borrower's account in the checkout section. So if I'm checking items out for a borrower, I could have just scanned their barcode in that top section and then immediately start scanning barcodes of items that they're wanting to check out without having to make any clicks in between. Before we start to check items out, let's look at the information at the top of the screen. We can enter a comment. Mine says this is my comment, but that's been typed in. So if nothing's in the comment field, that will just be blank. You can also see some basic information about the borrower, such as what type of account they have, if they have any items out or overdue, or any charges. And if they're a responsible party, you'll see responsible for, and then you can click show to see their group. And if they're the child or student account, then in that place it'll say responsible party and have the name of their parent or teacher. Click on that name to get back to that account. Now to check out items, all we need to do is start scanning barcodes right below. So if your scanner is working, you'll just start to scan, but if you have a scanner maybe that's broken, you can also type barcode numbers into this field. As you scan items, they'll just be added to the list below. Let's say you've got a borrower who has come up to your desk and they say, I typically get 3 weeks on this item, but I'm going to be on vacation and I'm not going to get it back in time. Is there any way I could get a couple of extra days? So what you can do is you can click on Change Due Date, and you'll likely have to enter an override password here. And then you can look for the date that you want to have that item due. So let's say instead of the 11th, I'm going to give the person until the following Monday to bring that item back. I'll click OK, and now it says due date on Monday, September 16th. So now I can scan the items that I want to have due on that date. You can see that the due date immediately cleared at the top. So if that person is checking out several items that they want to have due on that later due date, then whenever I change the due date, I'll need to select Leave On. Next on the right side of Change Due Date is Stats Only. This is a field for items where you're just keeping a count. So they're not necessarily items that are being checked out, but maybe it's something like program attendance, or how many people took something at a desk, how many people asked a certain type of question, anything like that that you want to keep stats on. And you can run reports on these things in LS2 reports. So let's say for my program attendance, I just counted 15 people at a program. So I'm going to enter 15 and select OK. And then it'll just immediately disappear because it's not anything that is being checked out to a particular borrower. Some libraries also like to keep a stats only account. So then they can just put stats in for that particular account instead of a particular borrower's account. Now I'm going to return back to the borrower's account that I was just on, and I can see my most recent searches whenever I click the search bar at the top of the screen. So if you accidentally move away from a borrower's account and need to get right back to it, you can just click the search bar and see your most recent borrowers. Finally, we can select items and then we can renew those selected items, or we can mark them as things like claims not checked out, and that'll just completely remove the item from the borrower's account. Next up, while we have a borrower pulled up, let's look at holds. So let's say a borrower has come up to the desk and they want to place a hold on an item that they found on the catalog, but they can't find it on the shelf. So you're going to search for the title that they want and click enter. You may get multiple options if you've searched for a name. So I'm going to say, okay, I want the book, not the large print. And then I can see the title right below. Then I can decide if I want the first available, a location specific item, item specific, or even multiple copies. So typically I'll just keep it on first available and click place hold. I get the note, hold placed successfully, and then I can go over into that borrower's current holds. Now I can see that book that I just placed on hold. I can also see the position that borrower is in for different items. So for each of these items, the borrower is next in line. Under status, I can see whether things are in transit or pending. And if an item's already in transit, it's already either on its way to my branch or waiting for a hold slip to be printed. So I cannot pause or suspend the hold for those items. However, this next hold is still pending, so it's likely that the borrower who had this book before me still has it checked out, so I can pause my hold on that item. Then I can select how long I want it to be suspended for. A couple of other options that I have are that I can cancel a hold completely, so I'll select the red cancel hold button, and I'll have to enter the override password, and then I'll get the hold canceled successfully notification. Another thing that I can do is click on this 1, 2, 3, and I can see if any other borrowers are in line for this particular title. So here I have only one name on the list, but if there were other borrowers in line, I would see them listed below. Now let's take a look at charges. Your library would have a limit set to charges so that once a person hits a certain number, their account is going to be blocked and they won't be able to check anything else out. This is library specific though, so your limit may be lower than mine, and it may be that a borrower would already be blocked with $31.95 in charges. On the left side of the charges section, I have a credit area. So if your library gives people credit, then you can add credit to their account here. So let's say something happened and I need to add $5 of credit to this borrower. So I will fill in the credit amount and a comment, and then I'll just select OK. And my borrower now has $5 in credit. So then I can go to the make payment side, and under credit balance, I can use that $5 to pay toward the fees. Now my total credit is 0 and I owe $26.95. You can also select pay with cash and make a partial or a full payment. So let's say this borrower comes up to the desk and they have a $20 bill with them. So you can just make a partial payment of $20. This paid toward my oldest charge first, and then I'm left with another charge below. I can also go into payment history and I can see what that borrower has paid in the past. So right at the top of my screen, I can see that $20 cash payment I just made, and I can see the credit that I just paid for $5 and when I received the $5 credit. Next, under borrower info, you can see all of a borrower's basic information. So everything like their name and their home location, if you've got multiple locations, borrower type, and so on, is available here. I can also see responsible for if this is a responsible party, and then I can change comments as well. So just select edit, select OK after you've entered your comment, and then you'll have to save changes to see that change reflected at the top of your screen. You'll see borrower was successfully updated and the new comment at the top. If you have a lot of text on the comment about a particular borrower and it's running off the screen, just highlight your mouse over that comment and you'll be able to see a pop-up box with the full comment. Next, let's take a look at extra info. So this section will look different for your library because these are custom borrower fields. So each of the fields that are seen here are set up in LS2 preferences, and they're all going to be either drop-down menus or short text. You can also see a little bit of additional information about your borrower on the right side of the screen here, particularly related to dates that they have last done things. Next, under settings, you will see the borrower's settings for notifications. There are default settings that are set in LS2 preferences, but they can be changed borrower by borrower right here. Finally, under loan history, you may or may not be able to see something here depending on your library settings. At the bottom of the screen, we've got delete borrower, change photo, new borrower, and copy borrower info. New borrower will bring you up a completely new screen to just enter new borrower information, but copy borrower info will copy a lot of the information from the current borrower that you have pulled up so that you can just change a little bit whenever you're creating new borrowers in a family group. So I can just enter a first name and then keep all of the rest of the information the same and save that. I can also select that the borrower I'm copying from is the responsible party, so like the parent or guardian, and keep the same notification settings. So this makes it really fast to add multiple borrowers when you have borrowers who are related come up to your desk. Now let's look at check-in. To check items in, all you need to do is scan their barcodes. You don't have to have any borrower pulled up. So scan the barcode and the information on that title will appear. You can also select in-house use if you find items laying around, for example. So maybe you find a couple of books on a table and you want to keep statistics on those books that they were used. In that case, you can select in-house use. You can just scan their barcodes and that'll just keep stats that they have been used, even though we don't know which patron used them. So you can see since I'm on in-house use check-in, there's no borrower name below. Finally, you may sometimes want to scan things in with a special status. So I'm going to scan my item and then I will get this special status menu that includes things like lost, staff action, claims returned, claims not checked out, and so on. So I can select that and then I'll get the information on that checkout. Finally, we have change check-in date. So maybe you are checking things in from a book drop, for example, so you want to backdate it to the day before. Simply select change check-in date, choose your date, and this will be a date in the past. And then you can also select leave on if you're going to be scanning multiple items, and OK. Now I can scan items in that are going to be backdated to the date that I selected. In this case, when I scanned an item in, I got a pop-up notification that this item should be placed on the hold shelf for another patron. I can simply select OK, or I can select print and print out the hold slip. That covers the basics of borrower services, so next we'll move on to staff services. The next tab at the top of LS2 Staff is Staff Services. This is the area where you can view and sometimes edit title and item level information, as well as view your holds shelf, canceled holds, arrived holds, and so on. Let's start by looking at titles and items. So when you open this screen, you can search for a title or you can scan a barcode. And for this title, I have multiple results, so I can select the result that I want. When I pull it up, I've got the title level or information at the top, or the record, and you may be able to see reading level information as well. This just depends on your library settings. And then at the bottom of the screen, I can see item level information, which is individual copy information. So my title level information includes things like the author, ISBN number, and so on. And at the top of the screen, I can also view the holds queue, view this title in pack, or view this title in LS2 cataloging. For item level information, I can select a particular item and then I'll be able to see more about it on the right side of the screen. I can see its barcode, I can see what collection it's in, and again, depending on your library settings, you may be able to see up to the last 3 borrowers who had this item. As you scroll down, you can see more information about this item, such as dates it was last circulated, the date it was added, its total circulation, and more. Depending on your account's permissions, you may have these 3 buttons at the right side of your item section. So the first one is Edit. If I select this item, then I can make some changes to the item level information. So I could change its barcode if I have to replace a barcode. I can change the price of an item, I can change the circulated by collection, and more. I can also add a new copy. So let's say we've got another copy that just came in of this exact same title, so we don't need to do anything in cataloging, we just need to add the item. So I'm going to select this green plus button, and then all I need to do is enter the barcode and make any changes to the item level information that I want to change. After I've entered the barcode, I can decide if there's anything that needs to be in the check-in and check-out note that can show in LS2 Staff. I can also decide if I want my item to be automatically available or still in processing so that it'll need to be checked in to become available. And then I can just save that item. Now I've got my new item listed at the bottom of my list. I can also remove items, so if I click on delete item, then this item will be removed from my system. Again, this depends on your permissions. I pulled up a title by searching its name at the top of the screen. There are a few other ways that you can also get to titles and items. So if, for example, you're in borrower services and looking at a borrower's account and they have something checked out, you can click on the barcode to be pulled right into this section. You can also click on barcodes and title names from other places such as the holds shelf, the check-in area, and more. So anytime in LS2 Staff where you see that an item's barcode is blue and underlined like it's a link, or the same thing goes for a title, if it's blue and underlined like it's a link, then either way you can click on either that barcode or the title and you'll be brought right to this place. Next, let's take a look at messages. We can get into messages by clicking this button on the left or by clicking the envelope at the top of the screen. When you're on general messages, you'll see items that are in transit, waiting to fulfill holds, or to be reshelved, and you'll also see canceled holds. So let's take this canceled hold and just check it back in, and that will put it back into available status. And now that canceled hold is available again. Going back into staff services, let's take a look at the holds shelf. So these are all of the items that should be on my holds shelf. And if I need to remove some of those items from the hold shelf, I can decide how many days I want to remove those from. So let's say we only hold them for 5 days. So I've got a lot of things on here that have been shelved for more than 5 days and I need to remove. So I'm going to select this button at the top and it will show me everything that's shelved for more than 5 days. And then I can either print my list from here or I can export a CSV to print as well. So then I can get all of those items off the hold shelf, check them back in, and they will either go to the next person in line for that hold or they'll go back into available status to be returned to their regular shelves. On the hold shelf, I can also view a few other things. I can click on the title or item to get into that titles and items screen, and I can cancel holds. I can view the holds queue, so I can see if I have more patrons waiting for that title. And in this case, I can see there are 2 pending holds. So if I click on the holds queue, then I can see the 2 others who have that hold or who have that title on hold as well. This one you can see is suspended, which is done by pushing the pause button, and you can move borrowers up to higher on the list if you need to as well from here. You can also see the pickup location for a borrower, and you might notice that these things can only be edited for the patrons that are still waiting in line. Once that hold has arrived, those items disappear. Next up, let's look at item transfers. In the item transfers section, you can change holdings codes, whether you want it to be the owning holdings code or the circulated by holdings code, and you can also change locations for items. So on the top of the list right here, you have change owning holdings code. So if you would like to make more of a permanent change to an item, then you can select this checkbox. If you're changing something temporarily, such as moving an item into a display collection, then leave this deselected so that the owning holdings code stays the same, and then you can move the item just into a new collection within your location. Other options here are to assign a new location or to assign both a new location and collection. So I will show you what you can do if you're changing things into a display collection. I'm going to assign to a new collection within this location, and then I'm going to select my display collection. From here, I have 2 options. The first option is that I can click on choose file, and then I can upload a file that's a TXT file, and it will need to have the words barcode list, all one word without spaces in the top line, and then every line after that will have to have a barcode only without any other characters. The second option is that since I'm putting items on display, I can go collect all of those items and then bring them back to a desk to scan them. As I scan items, I'll get this new holdings code on the side, and I can see that it's still in my Jefferson collection and DIS for display. Let me show you a few more items as we scan. This is what it looks like after I've scanned a couple more items. So on the right side of the screen, all of them say they are now in the holdings code for Jefferson and the display collection. And if I click on any item, I can see what its original or its owning holdings code is. So I'm going to click on the item ID. And when I'm brought into titles and items, you'll see that I have this little yellow triangle, which means that the owning holdings code and the circulated by holdings code are different. If I click on the edit button, I can see that, or if I look on basic info, I can see that initially that was owned by the Jefferson Pictures Book Collection, and now it's being circulated by the Jefferson Display Collection. I'm going to go back into item transfers, and when I'm finished with all of those books, having them on display, they've been out on display for a while maybe, and now I'm ready to transfer them back to their own collection. As long as I have not clicked this button at the top, so if I've just changed it to a new location temporarily, or a new collection temporarily, or both, and I have not clicked the button at the top, I can always return things back to their original collection. So I'm going to click return to home location and collection, and when I take those items off display, I will just take them over to a desk and scan them all in here. And for my item that I just scanned, you can see that on the right side, it says that now it's going back into the picture books collection, which was its original collection. So using item transfers is an easy way to temporarily change holdings codes, or if you need to make a permanent change of location or holdings code, then you can always click on the checkbox at the top of the screen. Finally, we have academic reserves, and you can get more information on this on LS Community. The final tab on LS2 Staff is Lists and Actions. In this section, you can run some reports that are a little bit more basic without getting into LS2 reports. So I'm going to start by clicking on Items. This is the place where you construct your lists. So you can add up to 5 filters, and there are several different options depending on what kind of list you're wanting to make or what kind of report you're wanting to run. So let's say I'm thinking about weeding and I'm at a multi-library branch, so I just want to look at things at my own library. in a particular collection, and I want to look at checkouts. So I'm going to first add the location filter because I only want to see things at my branch. I can decide if I want the owning or active location, which is the circulated by location, and then I can select which branches I want. Next, I just want to look at one collection at a time, so I'm going to click collection and add that filter. And then let's say I want to weed from my biography collection, so I'll select that collection. And I also want to think about checkouts, so I'm going to select checkouts and add that filter. And then I can decide, do I want to look at the total number of checkouts for items when they were last checked out, or how many checkouts they have this period, which would be this fiscal year. I'm going to select, and you can select more than one of these, but I'm going to select last checkout was before a specified date because I want to see things that haven't been checked out for a while. So I'm just going to make this so that it was a year ago when something was last checked out. And then you can continue adding filters if you want to. So if you want to add something else like the date added, or maybe you're just looking at a particular format and you have multiple formats in the collection you've selected, you can select up to 5 filters at a time, just depending on what you are running a list for. So I'm going to leave it at these 3 and click search. My search has brought up 251 items. So I have a couple of options on what I can do next. Since I'm wanting to look at these items and see if I want to weed them, I want to be able to see them maybe a little bit more clearly. So first I can select all and go to the actions drop-down menu at the bottom of the screen, and I can export those items from there. So I can export those into an Excel file and view them and sort them and manipulate the data a little bit more easily that way. Another thing that I can do is I can save my search. And just like in other areas of library.solutions, such as an LS2 pack, we can save items as a saved list or a saved search. So remember, a saved search is dynamic, and every time something changes, your search is going to update. So if I click on Save Search up here, which these do not need to be selected for, then something is added to or removed from my library's collection that would fall into the filters I've selected, then that search is going to update every time. So if I click Save Search, I can then name and enter a description for the search that I'm saving. I can also decide if I want to save my column layout, sort order, or share. And we'll get into column layout and sort order in a little bit, but sharing makes it so that this list is available to other users, and then they'll be able to get to it from lists and actions as well. After that, click Save. So remember, my search has 251 items right now, but if any of these items are removed from my collection, they will automatically be removed from my search. The other thing I can do is save the items as a list, and to do that I need to select them. So I can select all, or I can just select some, and then under actions I can either add my items to an existing list or create a new list. So I'll create a new list. Again, I've got the same selections at the bottom, and I will click Save. Notice for my biography list, there were 251 items in my total collection, but I deselected 3. So my biography weeding list is going to have 248 items on it. So now let's take a look at where we can find these lists. Go into Lists and Searches, and then you can click on Browse Lists and Searches to find the previous lists and searches that you have. And automatically you'll see your own, but you can also go into the shared lists and searches to see other people's lists and searches. So first I've got my weeding list, and it's denoted as a list by this little paper symbol on the far left side. And I can see I've got those 248 items, and I didn't click share on that list. The weeding search, however, is shown by having a magnifying glass, and it does not have an items count since searches are dynamic and will search again every time you click on it. So I can open either of these and see my list or my search that I previously saved. Finally, there are several areas in LS2 Staff where you can rearrange columns. So any columns that you see that are formatted exactly like this with a light gray at the top, you can change. So what you can do is start by right-clicking on that column and deciding what items you want to have showing. So for this weeding list, maybe I don't want to look at all of this information about an item. I just want to narrow it down to a little bit less. After I've selected which columns I would like to view, then I've got everything narrowed down to just the information that I want. And now I can start rearranging my columns. I suggest selecting which columns you want to have available first, because if you've rearranged the order of your columns and then you deselect some of the columns on that selection section, then your columns are going to sort back into their original order. So you want to always select which columns you want to have first and then start moving them around. So this works here in lists and searches. It also works in items, and there are some places in borrower services where you can do this as well. For example, I've pulled up the checkout items on a borrower's account, and here I can again right-click, decide which columns I want to have available, and then I can rearrange those columns here as well. So check for columns that have this formatting at the top of the screen with the light gray, and you will be able to rearrange those. Check in, for example, though, you can see that that formatting is different and we are not able to rearrange those columns. This has been a basic and brief introduction to LS2 Staff, so if you would like more information on any area of LS2 Staff, please go to LS Community and you will see much more detailed information there.